How's it going, everyone? We are here to talk about some Week 13 decision-making ideals and such. How's it going, Renee Miller?
It's going very good. I missed you last week. I hope you guys all had a good Thanksgiving.
I did. Taking the selfish route and talking about myself instead of the collective viewers for a second. I ate a lot. I ate too much. This was the most I've ever eaten on Thanksgiving before. And it was startling the amount of food I could fit in myself when I try, you know?
Same. Same here. I don't know if it's the most I've ever eaten, but it was a lot.
You know, that third piece of pie was really unneeded, and I just went for it anyway. And hopefully,
every variety.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I had to try it. What am I, a quitter? So the first starting point here that you introduced is Drew Brees at 7,600. Obviously, a exciting game to get a piece of. So Drew Brees, 7,600 on DraftKings.
Yeah.
Lions in New Orleans. What are you looking at in that game?
I mean, all the Drew Brees. I think it's really hard to not use him in cash games. My second option is an alternative, but I think you're overthinking it if you don't think Brees is going to meet value, exceed value, and just dominate this game. The Lions are actually pretty good run defense, which even as much as we know about Brees and his home road splits and his passing volume, I mean, he's been outstanding this year, like every year. The fact that they might have some difficulty, Ingram and Hightower on the ground, boosts Brees' value even more.
So I'll pose this question that, as I say, I go sit on my rock and ponder things. Brandon Cook's not on my he's on my naughty list, I'd say right now, based on what happened last week with his 0. Are you okay with going back to him this week?
So we've talked about Michael Thomas so many times here, and I too. I mean, last week was awful for me. I had in the Sunday slate, I had Cooks, Cooper, and someone else. It was like I had the worst wide receiver core you could imagine. Embarrassing, right? So yeah. I think Cooks bounces back. Yeah, it's really easy to put somebody like that on your never again list, but this is just an offense that has a lot of weapons, and it's not always going to fall the predictable way. I think Cooks and Thomas are both usable this week.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I know this might sound weird, but this might be the best supporting cast Drew Brees has ever had. I mean, just thinking back, he always had the Lance Moore and little speed.
Jimmy Graham years are pretty good.
Yeah, but he's never had Michael Thomas is a real player. Brandon Cooks is awesome. So yeah, there's going to be weeks where they just spread it out. But again, for roster construction, Drew Brees not killing you at 7,600 really.
No, and you can get some solid running backs in with him, which is kind of the way I like to go. I recommended LaShawn McCoy, who had one of his best games of the year with a broken finger, the dislocated finger, and Jordan Howard, who gets the 49ers. The 49ers are obviously the worst team against the run this year, but they're worst by so much. It's kind of staggering. I think Jordan Howard should be fine. Langford hasn't been able to really surpass or supplant any of his volume. So I think getting some solid running backs in with Brees is a good way to go.
Yeah, and Jay Ajayi last week may push a few people off, targeting that 49ers run D, and I just think, this is a great spot to have Howard because they are bad. They're a bad run defense. And it's just it couldn't have changed that much in a week. You know what I mean? After being horrible all year. So I think we just chalk that up to, a bad week for the Dolphins and fire away with Howard here. Yeah, I love those two. McCoy, I should have seen that one coming last week, but that run game is awesome. So definitely like that. The next one here, you go with another quarterback. An interesting route, I'd say, to at least ponder. Matt Barkley at 6K on FanDuel. Certainly going to open up a lot for you. What are you looking at there?
I'm looking at the fact that he threw the ball 54 times last week. He made a couple mistakes, but he threw for 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards. And at minimum salary, you're just not getting that. You're just not getting that for most of the guys that are coming in at 7,000, 7,300. Like Alex Smith is in that range and gets a really nice matchup this weekend. But I'd rather save a little bit and go with a guy that's going to chuck it, because that's where the fantasy points come from. They don't come from a very efficient 160 with 1 touchdown kind of Alex Smith performance. So, the 49ers are not a bad matchup for opposing quarterbacks, but it's really the salary that drives this pick. There's, there's no reason for him to not throw at a high volume, maybe not 54 times volume, but 40, 45 pass attempts seem reasonable. And I kind of liked what I saw last week.
Now, you just brought up Alex Smith, and like any type of, podcasting duty I have, I feel like I have to talk about how, especially Alex Smith has been this year. It's been unbelievable how many good matchups he's just squandering for fantasy points.
I know.
It's unbelievable. He's actually, like, in past years, he wasn't that bad. Like, he was okay sometimes. He'd get some rushing yards but that's just all evaporated this year. I hate Alex Smith. So that's
you Spencer well.
But yeah, Matt Barkley, he didn't look nearly as bad as I thought he would last week. And I think that's promising, even with no weapons, at the min, against a below average defense. I actually do think this is pretty appealing.
You can then use Julio Jones. You can use David Johnson. Mm-hmm. You can do a lot at the other skill positions. And with the tight ends off the table, there's value at tight end too. Mm-hmm. So, I really think if you use a value tight end like Vance McDonald or something, Fedorowicz maybe is, perennial cheap tight end this season. Yes. Ladarius Green, I think, could be a nice contrarian option. You can really stack the top tier at running back and wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think, this is kind of a week where the top guys have good matchups. We sort of see week to week. Sometimes, the top guys just don't have optimal matchups. I feel like, you look at Antonio Brown, you look at Julio, you look at David Johnson, like you were mentioning, and Le'Veon. These guys are all in pretty good spots. And if you can fit in, 3 of them or something crazy like that, you're looking at a pretty good chance at some high upside. So I do agree there. Your last construction is talking about some lower priced players. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I think I don't know, there's a couple guys I just want to have some exposure to this weekend. They're not necessarily guys that I would really start building around, but I've mentioned Jimmy Graham. I think is probably the top tight end option this week. It's a great matchup. He's been really consistent this year. Really come into the role that we expected him to have in Seattle. So I really think he's your best tight end option, even though he's also the most expensive. Cheap receivers I like include Taylor Gabriel, who just, has a nose for the end zone. The guy can score from anywhere, and he's just building really nice trust. And with Julio Jones across the field from him, it's not like defenses can really make too many accommodations to double cover him and leave Julio Jones wide open. So I really like Taylor Gabriel again. He's very cheap. Tyler Boyd, I think, is in the same high volume role. He had 9 targets last week. He didn't do much until the second half, and even then it was kind of less than you would have hoped for. But it's a much better matchup this week. I mentioned, we just saw what Davante Adams did to the Eagles. Boyd is kind of capable of filling that role for the Bengals. And last, I think Dion Lewis is a great cheap play to round out lineups. He had 7 targets last week with Gronkowski out now for sure. I like Lewis even more. I think he's the best candidate to pick up a lot of that slack. And finally, just a total weird one like I had with Ted Ginn last week is Kenny Stills. I think that Stills could end up having a bigger game than we think, especially if Devontae Parker, is less than 100%.
Yeah, Devontae Parker missing practice. Kenny Stills actually been pretty decent this year in terms of having those like big random games. He really is a lot like Ted Ginn. I like that matchup. You mentioned Dion Lewis. Our cafe value loves Dion Lewis this week, and I kind of initially to start out wasn't too high on him, but the more you think about it, and then obviously the Gronk injury, you're like, okay, I can see a scenario where Lewis they kind of need him now.
Yeah, I agree, and he was such a big game changer for them last year, so the potential is definitely there. And like I said, he didn't do a lot last week, but 7 targets. Tom Brady throws the ball a lot. There's enough to go around, and I think most people are looking at Malcolm Mitchell as the guy who's going to step up in the offense, which is very possible. But I think with New England, the moral of the story usually is there's enough to go around.
Yes, absolutely. And I thought it was funny you mentioned Taylor Gabriel. Yes, no defenses can do anything to put extra coverage on him.
Yeah.
He's just going to stay in these matchups, 4-2 speed, and Julio is just looming. That's what everyone's worried about, Yeah. So that's going to continue to be a weird thing for defenses to deal with. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to throw out there before we head out for the week?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of ways to go this week, and all of them can involve using the Broncos defense against the Jaguars, which I think is smart. Sammy Watkins maybe. The total on the Bills-Raiders game has come down a little bit, but it's still one of the higher ones, which I think is kind of interesting. And in such limited action last week, Sammy Watkins was able to make a big difference for the Bills. So I think even if he ramps up by 50%, he can easily be like the kind of 5 for 110 and a touchdown kind of play this week.
Yeah, and him missing practice early this week is going to push a lot of people off him. So I actually do think the ownership's going to be there for him this week. I like that call. And yeah, Blake Bortles is going to somehow find a way to throw an interception off someone's foot. Like, I don't know if it's his teammate or like one of the cornerbacks' feet, but that's been his move this year. Now, but more seriously, a turnover machine this year. And if there's ever a team that could turn that into a pick six, it's the Broncos.
Yeah.
As always, if you want to check out this article, certainly head over to dailyfantasycafe.com. If you want to like this video and subscribe, I would appreciate it. You don't have to, but I would appreciate it. This is me being passive aggressive right now. I will hold this against you. And good luck this week. We will see you guys in week 14.